Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Leicester Cathedral. You will by now have heard the result of the judicial review into the decision that King Richard III should be reinterred here in Leicester Cathedral. And if you haven't heard, the result is that the judgment has gone Leicester's way. To summarise what the judges have said, and I quote from the judgment, in our judgment there was no duty on the Secretary of State to consult in this case. No separate issues arise under the duty to have regard to relevant considerations. In our judgment there are no public law grounds for the court interfering with the decisions in question. In the result, therefore, the claimant's application for judicial review is dismissed. And the judges have added a postscript, which I very briefly share with you. Since Richard III's exhumation on the 5th of September 2012, passions have been roused and much ink has been spilt. Issues relating to his life and death and place of reinterment have been exhaustively examined and debated. The Very Reverend David Monteith, the Dean of Leicester, on my right, has explained the considerable efforts and expenditure invested by the cathedral in order to create a lasting burial place as befits an anointed king. We agree that it is time for Richard III to be given a dignified reburial and finally laid to rest. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are of course delighted. Here in the cathedral, in the diocese, in the city and the county, we've waited a long time for this, and the Leicester Cathedral Quarter Partnership Board, which I chair and which is represented on the panel here in front of you, all share this delight. It will lead to a major national series of events centred here, and we're now planning for a reinterment to proceed with dignity and honour as soon as it is possible to make the necessary arrangements. Plans which have been on hold for some time will now start in earnest, and you'll hear more about that from the Dean and others in a moment. Let me introduce on my left the City Mayor, to his left Professor Mark Thompson representing the University, Councillor Nick Rushton, the leader of the County Council, and on my right Dr. Richard Buckley, the head of the University of Leicester Archaeological Service. I'm going first of all to invite Professor Thompson, speaking for the University as the institution which discovered the remains of Richard III and to whom the licence was originally issued, to make the first comment. Mark.
Thank you. First of all, can I just say how delighted we are as a university, but also for the city and for the cathedral. This has been a major research project carried out by the university, and we were always very clear from the outset that the intention was to reinter the remains, if we discovered them, in the cathedral. That we've always been fully open about that. It's never been a secret. So we're absolutely delighted that we're now able to achieve this outcome, and can just say how good it's been to work with the cathedral and the council in taking forward this really major project, which is a stunning success for the university, for the city and the cathedral. And at last we can reinter the remains in due course with dignity and honour. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Now I invite Sir Peter Salisbury, the City Mayor.
I think when we discovered that our university had found the bones of a King of England in our car park, we as a city recognised that this was something that was of not just local significance, but national and international significance. And I suppose we're not surprised that others took an interest in where the reinterment should take place. But the argument for reinterment here in this cathedral was overwhelming. It was one that is reflected in archaeological good practice. It was reflected in the license that was granted, and of course it was felt very widely to be the proper place for the reinterment, since it was in the shadow of this cathedral that the body was originally buried on the orders of the new king, and in the shadow of the cathedral that those remains have laid for over 500 years. It is now something, after the frustration of recent months, that is now in the hands of the cathedral to ensure that they and we make proper provision for the reinterment to take place, that it is done with proper dignity and respect, and that those remains are laid in what we're all confident will be a tomb fit for a king.
Thank you, Peter. The process in which we will now be engaged will involve close partnership working between the diocese and the cathedral, the university, and our partners in the city and county councils, with whom already we have been in very close communication in recent months. I'm delighted, therefore, also to be able to invite Councillor Nick Rushton, the leader of the County Council, to say a few words.
Thank you very much, Bishop. From a personal point of view, I'm really happy that this is settled. We've been positive in our support for the university, the cathedral and the city, but I think it's been a most undignified time for Richard. We must remember this is the body of a man and a king of England. Next year it will be 530 years since he died in battle on Bosworth Field in Leicestershire, the last king to die in battle. It will be with great pride that the people of Leicestershire will be involved in part of the ceremony. He deserves to be buried with dignity and honour in Leicester Cathedral, and we will do all we can to support the church, the bishop and the city and the university to that extent. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nick. Well, now, the responsibility for the planning and the taking forward of all the developments that flow from today's judgment will fall mainly on my colleague, David Monteith, the Dean of Leicester. I'm going to invite him now to say a few words initially about the next steps, the plans, and how this will roll out from here on.
Thank you, Bishop. I just want to begin by saying thank you to colleagues. First of all, to the Looking for Richard team, who started this whole quest off and who have revealed this extraordinary story in partnership with so many others. And that is the mode by which we will move forward to the detailed plans for the reinterment. The timeline, we're now going to try to scrutinise and come to a common mind about, and to work for a date which is likely to be in the spring of 2015. The tenders are shortly to be received for the work, and the plans are now going to be worked up in detail, having not been able to do that detailed work for the last few months. You'll be aware that a design for the tomb has been approved by the Cathedral Fabric Commission for England, pending the outcome of judicial review. And so in 3 or 4 weeks' time, we hope to be able to reveal that newly revised design, which has had a lot of work done on in recent months. And so we look forward to receiving response from that design, which has already approval granted. Thirdly, these events are of huge significance here, but they are of huge significance to the nation, and the world is watching with interest. And so it's a joy and a delight to be able to confirm that our principal media partners for the events and services will be Channel 4. And so we look forward to working with them for the broadcasts that no doubt will ensue. And the final thing to say is that this Christian cathedral, set in the heart of this very vibrant and multicultural community, has doors which are open to all people. And wherever you have sat on the debates surrounding this story, I want to very publicly say that everyone is welcome here, and that we now need to lay this man and this anointed king to rest, And we need to do that as one community and one nation, working together to ensure that he is indeed laid with dignity and honour.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we do have a little time, perhaps up to 20 minutes or so for questions at this stage, and then we will need to vacate the cathedral, but there is space and time in St Martin's House across the square for further questions after 20 to 11. But we're happy to take a few questions from you now at this stage, if anybody would like to ask. Yes.
I want to hear how Richard Buckley feels about it.
Well, obviously, absolutely delighted. Absolutely delighted. I've always felt from the very beginning that it's important to maintain this strong historical association between Richard III and the city of Leicester. So, yes, delighted that the High Court has seen fit to uphold the exhumation licence. I'm also delighted for the people who've been involved in the project, such as Philippa Langley and the members of the Looking for Richard project. And they never doubted that we'd be successful in this endeavour, even though I was. But so extremely pleased at the way it's all turned out.
Any other questions? Yes.
Not to sort of bring it up straight away, but what happens with an appeal process? Once had it lies now, what do they do?
My understanding is that the judicial process allows for a 3-week period during which the claimants can make a decision as to whether or not they wish to appeal this judgment. But I also understand that the grounds for any appeal can only be made on a point of law. So they will need to be able to establish that the interpretation of the law is in some respect erroneous in order to launch an appeal. We will, of course, wait to hear what they decide. Yes?
Do you have any sympathy for plantagenet riots and the way they've conducted their campaign to obviously get
I wonder whether I might ask the City Mayor to respond to that question, and then I'll ask the Dean.
Well, I can understand where they're coming from, and it's York. And, of course, it is perhaps understandable that, somewhat belatedly, they should show an interest in trying to get the remains of a king who bore the family name of York back to that city. But, of course, the connection with York was always tenuous. He was born in Fotheringhay. He died here in Leicestershire. He was brought up at Middleham. His brother, who was the Duke of York, he was, of course, himself the Duke of Gloucester. His brother is buried in St George's Chapel, Windsor. It was always a very tenuous link. And a case that they wanted to press, nonetheless. I think the other thing that is perhaps worth saying is that they have presented themselves as his ultimate descendants. But of course, over the many generations, the numbers of people who could claim to be descendants from the family are, it is estimated, somewhere between 1 and 17 million people. So I think to suggest, as they did, that they had some special right to be consulted, didn't bear close examination.
There may have been some hope or expectation attaching to York Minster. I'll ask the Dean to comment on what his views are about this claim.
Well, you know, as a priest, I've dealt with many families at times of death and bereavement. And of course, often what happens when you get a funeral is you get quite a lot of underlying leftover disputes. And so I think there's been a degree of that going on in this particular process. It's never been entirely clear to me what they actually wanted. And indeed, at the hearing itself, the judge kept pressing them, and they weren't terribly forthcoming. And it would have been, I think, much easier for all of us if we actually knew the answer to that question. And so it's been a difficult time for us. We've waited and we've wanted to get on with things. And of course, it's cost the public purse quite a lot of money and delay. And so I'm not entirely sure that judicial review was necessarily the best way to deal with this sort of issue. And so I'm relieved it's come to an end.
And if I might say so, none of us would have wanted this delay, but it has meant that when we go ahead, we will go ahead with a really well-prepared, well-planned, excellent national event, which will be the pride of Leicester. Yes. And I hope all the people of Leicester and Leicestershire are going to get behind this now and show how very proud they are of their city, of their county, of their history, and of their cathedral. It's a great, great opportunity for us, and we're going to take it.
Yeah.